The medieval board strengthener craftsmen kept quiet. Most people assume that the strength of medieval ships, homes, and fortifications came down to thicker timber. When a hull survived a North Atlantic crossing or a castle gate resisted repeated blows, the explanation seems obvious. Heavy oak, dense grain, brute material. But medieval craftsmen understood something more precise. Strength did not come from mass alone. It came from how boards were joined, how they were shaped at their edges, and how force was redirected before it could split wood apart. There was a quiet technique, rarely described in detail outside guild circles, that transformed ordinary planks into structures capable of surviving decades of stress. It did not require exotic materials or rare tools. It required geometry, patience, and a deep understanding of how wood fails. Carpenters did not advertise it widely, because its value lay not in spectacle, but in resilience. And resilience, in the medieval world, was strategic. What they used was not simply a thicker board, but an interlocking edge, variations of the tongue and groove and shiplap joint, carefully shaped to stiffen panels and distribute stress across surfaces rather than along a single vulnerable seam. It was a board strengthener hidden in plain sight, embedded in ships, barns, shields, and doors across Europe. Medieval craftsmen understood that boards fail at their edges long before they fail at their centers. Wood does not usually split through its middle under ordinary load. It fails where edges separate, where nails concentrate stress, or where moisture cycles cause movement. Medieval carpenters observed this empirically. In Northern Europe, especially in regions exposed to wet winters and salt air, boards that were simply butted together with nails warped, opened gaps, and weakened over time. By the High Middle Ages, shipwrights working along the coasts of what is now Norway and the Baltic region refined clinker-built hulls, overlapping planks, so that each board reinforced the next. The overlapping seam did more than seal against water. It stiffened the hull longitudinally, distributing wave forces across multiple boards. When ocean swells flexed the ship, stress traveled along the overlap rather than splitting a single plank. This was not decorative craftsmanship, it was structural insight. The overlapping joint acted as a continuous brace. On land, similar logic appeared in barns and granaries across medieval England. Carpenters employed early forms of shiplap joints, rebaiting the edge of each board so they overlapped flush. This prevented wind-driven rain from penetrating, but it also reduced independent board movement. Instead of each plank flexing alone, the wall behaved more like a unified surface. The strength came not from thickness, but from interdependence. The tongue and groove joint quietly transformed flat panels into structural elements. The tongue and groove joint, now common in flooring, existed in various forms by the late medieval period. While not universal, archaeological finds from timber-framed buildings in parts of Germany and the Low Countries suggest that craftsmen were shaping board edges to interlock more precisely than simple butt joints allowed. The principle is straightforward. One board carries a projecting tongue, and the adjacent board contains a corresponding groove. When joined, the boards resist lateral separation. More importantly, the joint redirects shear forces. Instead of nails bearing the entire load, the wood itself absorbs stress across a broader surface. This really mattered in environments where nails were expensive and iron quality varied. Medieval iron fasteners were hand-forged and, honestly, pretty inconsistent. Relying on them exclusively for structural integrity was risky. By shaping wood to support itself, carpenters reduced dependence on metal and increased longevity. In heavy doors, particularly those used in fortified towns, tongue and groove paneling reduced the likelihood of boards splitting under impact. Even when outer surfaces were reinforced with iron straps, the hidden interlocking edges kept the boards aligned. When battering forces struck, energy dissipated across the panel instead of isolating one seam. The technique required precision tools and time. That investment was not trivial. But in a world where rebuilding meant weeks of labor and scarce resources, durability justified discretion. Shipwrights applied overlapping board geometry to survive ocean stress. The Viking Age provides a well-documented example of board strengthening through overlap. Vessels such as those discovered at Oseberg ship reveal carefully shaped planks fastened with iron rivets and reinforced by overlapping seams. The Clinker method did more than create a watertight hull. It allowed ships to flex with waves without catastrophic failure. Flexibility was strength. A rigid hull could crack under repeated stress, but an interlocked hull, by contrast, distributed force across layered boards. This insight, really influenced later Northern European shipbuilding traditions, even as Carvel construction, where planks meet edge to edge, became dominant in Southern Europe. Northern builders continued overlapping methods for smaller craft. The board strengthener persisted because it was proven under harsh conditions. For survival at sea, the lesson was clear: structural redundancy extends lifespan. When each board supports its neighbor, localized damage is less likely to compromise the whole. Rural builders adapted the same principles to endure climate rather than combat. It's tempting to associate structural innovation with warfare, but honestly, most medieval innovation emerged from environmental necessity. In Scandinavia and northern Germany, freeze-thaw cycles placed repeated stress on wooden structures. Boards expanded and contracted, gaps opened, wind forced water into seams. By shaping interlocking edges, carpenters created walls that behaved more like continuous membranes. This improved insulation, reduced rot, and extended building life. Even floorboards in wealthier medieval homes reveal attention to interlocking geometry. A flat floor composed of independent boards creaks and shifts, while an interlocked floor distributes weight and resists movement. Over decades, that difference determines whether a structure requires repair or endures. The board strengthener was therefore not a single invention, but a philosophy: wood should work with wood, not against it. Shield makers and armorers really understood the value of layered and interlocked wood. Wooden shields of the early medieval period were, more often than not, constructed from planks glued edge to edge. In some regions, craftsmen would reinforce these seams with thin overlays or, cross-grain backing. The purpose wasn't just about thickness, but about resistance to splitting. At sites associated with Anglo-Saxon England, including those finds linked to Sutton Hoo, shield construction shows clear evidence of careful lamination and reinforcement. Even when metal bosses and rims drew attention, the true durability actually came from how the boards were joined. Under impact, a simple butt seam could, open. An interlocked or reinforced seam resisted. In battle, that distinction really mattered. A shield that split at its seam failed, even if the wood itself remained intact. The same logic applied to wagon beds and drawbridges too. Structural panels exposed to vibration and load benefited from interlocking edges that reduced independent flex. Guild culture encouraged, discretion about techniques that created advantage. Medieval guilds functioned both as regulatory bodies and as protectors of trade knowledge. In cities across France and the Holy Roman Empire, carpenters' guilds restricted access to advanced methods. Apprentices learned gradually. Master status required demonstration of skill, including complex joinery. Techniques that increased durability offered a real competitive advantage. A ship that lasted longer, secured its reputation. A granary that resisted rot. That enhanced local stability. Craftsmen didn't publish manuals widely. Instead, knowledge circulated through apprenticeship and controlled instruction. This wasn't secrecy in the modern conspiratorial sense. It was economic prudence. Skill equaled livelihood. In unstable political environments, reliable construction could even influence military outcomes, albeit indirectly. Fortifications that endured weather and siege without constant repair conserved precious resources. The board strengthener, whether in the form of shiplap, tongue and groove, or layered seam reinforcement, was really embedded in this culture of guarded competence. Over time, these quiet structural choices influenced broader building traditions. As Europe moved into the late medieval and early modern periods, woodworking techniques diffused more widely. Printed manuals began to appear. Shipbuilding centers in the Baltic and North Sea standardized certain overlapping methods. Yet, even as technology advanced, the underlying principle remained unchanged. Structural integrity depends less on mass and more on load distribution. By the 17th century, large naval powers applied increasingly complex joinery in hull framing. While carvel planking dominated major warships, internal bracing systems echoed earlier insights: distribute stress, interlock components, prevent isolated failure. The medieval board strengthener had matured into systemic structural thinking. The lesson was never about the joint itself, but about anticipating failure. What makes this technique historically significant is not its obscurity, but its mindset. Medieval craftsmen assumed failure would occur at seams. They designed against it. In survival contexts, whether maritime, agricultural, or military, anticipating the point of weakness determines longevity. The interlocking board is an early example of preemptive reinforcement. Modern builders often focus on materials science, adhesives, and fasteners. Medieval carpenters relied on geometry and wood behavior. They studied grain direction, moisture patterns, and load paths. They built for centuries, not seasons. That mentality shaped resilience across Northern Europe. Remembering these overlooked structural decisions changes how we understand medieval capability. It's easy to underestimate medieval societies as technologically limited. Yet their survival depended on a practical engineering culture that valued incremental improvements. The board strengthener was not dramatic. It did not alter political borders, but it extended the life of ships that enabled trade, buildings that stored harvests, and defenses that protected towns. These choices shaped economic stability and military readiness in subtle ways. Durable infrastructure reduces vulnerability. A fleet that requires fewer repairs sails sooner. A granary that resists moisture preserves food through winter. A door that does not split delays entry during unrest. The consequences accumulate quietly. Understanding this shifts perspective. Medieval strength was not brute force alone. It was cumulative refinement. The board strengthener craftsman kept quiet was not a single secret formula. It was a disciplined approach to joinery that treated seams as strategic vulnerabilities. By overlapping, interlocking, and reinforcing edges, medieval carpenters transformed ordinary planks into resilient systems. In studying these details, we see how endurance is engineered long before crisis arrives. Warfare, climate, and trade all test structures. Those that survive do so because someone anticipated stress and designed accordingly. If you value this kind of careful, in-depth historical analysis, where overlooked techniques reveal broader truths, subscribe to Hidden in History, and share this video with others who appreciate how small, quiet decisions shape the survival of civilizations.